even though it's often put in the context of like graphic design or visual design or something that requires a designer. But I think anything that has a thoughtful execution is design. So, products, visuals, workflows, systems, all of that embodies design. Now, art, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily have the constraints or need to have the clarity, because art is more about expressing sort of like your personal ideas or your personal views, and honestly, only needs to exist in the mind of the artist. In short, art asks, what do I want to say? While design asks, what does this need to do? To put this into the context of production or any sort of like creative job where you're sitting on a team at a company, or even if you're a freelancer serving clients, designers make things that are so beautiful and had a great time in the process of making it. And you have all the collective minds that are like pouring their energy into this thing, be really excited and really passionate about this thing that they're making. But once it gets put out into the universe, it doesn't necessarily get the response that they're looking for. As a creative person, and I'm guilty of this 1,000%, is sometimes we fall in love with the process and we fall in love with what it is we're making, really fight for an idea and go through this battle to like explain and break down and show how, we were able to take this brief and connect it to this like creative thing that we're making, maybe using more of that artistic muscle. The audience doesn't have access to the brief. The audience didn't sit in the workshopping sessions and they haven't been in a Figma board. People are constantly bombarded every day with thousands upon thousands of messaging. The opportunity to cut through that noise is having clarity be what drives the execution. And I think that's also sometimes where we have conflicts with stakeholders, because stakeholders are typically leading with a very design mentality. They're not considerate of the artistic and the creative nature of how things come together. Another thing I see, particularly stakeholders want something to say like 20 things. This is the product, but we want to make sure people think it's awesome. It's the best thing out there. It can do this, it can do that. The more we can prioritize like a singular message in our creative, particularly in today's world, I think that's the opportunity for us to be more successful. What is it that I want this thing to do? What's the singular thing I want someone to walk away with after engaging with this asset? This is where being hyper-focused on story in the initial building of the thing leads to clarity. And this applies to design, it applies to filmmaking, it applies to any sort of creative endeavor. If you can be hyper-focused on the story layer, sometimes people get excited, they jump into Figma and already they're playing with different colors and thinking a lot about textures and really investing early on into like the visual coolness of something. These things are valuable, but if your story isn't straight, if your story isn't clear, if I can't understand exactly what you're saying, or your messaging is too complex or too multi-layered, all that extra work makes it even more confusing. I think ultimately, if we're really executing with a design-driven mindset, we're going to be much more successful to ensure the end user has the experience that we desire.